Welcome to Shadow of Truth, and today is Monday, March the 6th, 2017, and your hosts are Dave Kranzler from InvestmentResearchDynamics.com and Rory Hall from thedailycoin.org. What's going on, Dave?
Well, it's just another Monday here. Got a live wind tunnel outside my window here. Bet you it's blowing about 70 miles an hour out there.
Oh my God. Coming up over the mountain and whipping down into the valley, is it?
That's pretty much what's happening.
Well, I'm glad
we're not in Kansas either.
Hopefully it'll peter out as it moves across Kansas.
Exactly.
Before it gets to Tennessee. Well, we got a lot to talk about, so let's just jump in.
Let's get started.
The whole wiretap thing seems to be dominating every form of news right now. Pretty much everywhere you turn, and the economic news has kind of taken a back seat for now.
Well, like investing.com, it's actually Reuters. Wall Street slips on wiretap accusation and geopolitical worries. Well, what does the wiretapping have to do with the economics of the United States and the financial system? It doesn't.
They're not.
I mean, it's the most idiotic headline. When I saw it this morning, I almost fell off my chair. Really? You're going to tell me that the stupid wiretap accusations going back and forth between some little squabble between the two political parties in this country is going to cause the Dow to drop 77 points? How about the fact that this is the most overvalued stock market in history?
Yes.
That, it's a powder keg that's just waiting for a spark to hit it and blow up. And you're telling me this little political squabble that's really kind of meaningless is affecting the stock market? I mean, that's just beyond absurd.
Well, it's not actually all that meaningless. I mean, it's pretty damaging for the Obama regime and Hillary Clinton, Loretta Lynch. All of these people are involved, and it's traveled around the globe to the point of Maria Zakharova, who is the equivalent of Sean Spicer here in the United States. Her position is Director of Information and Press for Foreign Affairs for the Russian Federation. So I guess she would be more like State Department, not Sean Spicer, because he's the press secretary, the spokesperson for the State Department. She had some very interesting comments just over the past few days, and I want to read these to you.
And real quickly, though, I agree with you. This is a significant piece of news,
but not economically.
It's not economic or financial, and we still need to see evidence that there was wiretapping. I mean, you can't just go with, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, at this point, everything's hearsay. Let's get some evidence. And I don't doubt that it went on, but you still need to have evidence. I mean, I'm not going to put anything on my blog, saying that it was being done until I can see some evidence. I suspect that it probably was, but let's see the proof.
Well, we can say that it was because there's been a blanket dragnet on everybody.
I just still haven't seen evidence. I want to see evidence. Again, it's all hearsay.
Well, I respect that and appreciate that, but there is right now, this conversation is being recorded. I mean,
no, I understand that, but that's different than saying, well, Barack Obama directly, ordered wiretapping on Trump, as opposed to, the NSA, there's a blanket wiretap on the country.
Yes.
I want to see the evidence. Let's see a WikiLeaks email that proves it. Something like that. Whatever it is. Like I said, I have no doubt that it happened.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to make a big deal out of it until I see evidence. That's the problem. I mean, you see all these accusations flying around, and then it becomes accepted as if it's truth, and it's not. Like the Russians, it went from the Russians, hacked the DNC email to the Russians hacked the elections. I still don't try to figure out how you hack an election.
Oh, well,
they didn't rig the voting, because we found in some of the recounts that
that Hillary lost.
Actually, there were more votes for Trump than they originally thought. So it wasn't like they rigged the voting. So how did they hack the election? What does that mean to hack the election? It sounds to me like if you want to say, well, they hacked the election, well, the Democrats Hillary tried to float propaganda to make people think that Trump was a Russian operative. They're still trying to do that.
Still trying. And this is, to your point right there, Dave, this young lady, Maria Zakharova, this is a direct quote. Big Brother in America is now the media, which have stepped so far outside of professional ethics as well as their own competency. They accuse and judge based on entirely fabricated lies. This is what's happening, and it is very scary because in the heat of the internal political wars, and that is what the media have become, very much a tool of the U.S. inter-administration conflict, they risk destroying any authority the media has in delivering certain information to the public. This authority is being destroyed not only in their own country, but globally. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. I agree that it's dangerous ground to publish some of the things that are floating around out there, and that's exactly what this young lady is saying. That the media has just become this massive propaganda tool, and they're destroying themselves, which is what I've said for some time, ever since this whole election cycle actually started. I mean, every time they open their mouths, they discredit themselves a little further. And that's kind of what's happening right now. And I hate to see the Trump administration getting on board with it. And like you said, let's see some evidence. I mean, I would like to see some evidence as well. But I think that it's there. I think they just have to get it.
Well, I'm sure the evidence is there. It is, we just got to see it. It's got to be, someone's got to cough it up. Look, I like the way she put that. The media, the Big Brother is the media, and that's true. And really, what it comes down to is you've got wealthy individuals, very wealthy insider elite individuals and corporations that now control the media. There's six entities that control all of the mainstream media in this country, and that originally the laws were set up so that couldn't happen.
Right.
And Clinton undid those laws. I think it was his FCC Act of 1996, I believe. I looked it up a few months ago. And so what it is that the root of it is that you've got a fusion between corporations and government, which is Mussolini's definition of fascism.
Yep.
It's when the big corporations and the government become one, which is basically what they are. And they've taken over the media, and yeah, they're destroying their credibility, but it'll get to a point where the government's response to the public's response will be to impose more totalitarian measures, which is what Trump's doing already.
Yes.
He's controlling access to his administration, doing what he's doing, and people are cheering him on. Yeah, that's great, but guess what? It's a totalitarian maneuver. What he should do is go and break up the monopoly these guys have, or the oligopoly the six corporations and wealthy individuals have. The control they have over the media. Let's break it into pieces and let's get healthy competition in there so that you get real reporting going on again.
Yes,
You
I
know,
would.
like we had with Watergate. So, you know, at least you had reporters out there trying to dig up the truth, whatever the truth was with Watergate. But you know, we haven't seen anything like that in a long time. I mean, we should have had that when the Iran Contra affair was going on, and all of those illicit activities that the Bush family was involved in, that and Oliver North, that got covered up and buried.
Yep.
You know, I mean, journalism and a free open media is another check and balance on the three branches of government, and we don't have that check and balance anymore.
Yeah, it's really the only check and balance that we have against the three branches of federal government. That's it, is the media. And now they're bought and paid for. So what do we have? Nothing. We've got nothing. We've got you and I.
Right.
And the sources that we can get to are limited. Why? Because all the sources are controlled by the six media giants. I mean, it's just incredible. Okay, so we file a Freedom of Information Act, uh, whatever petition, and what do we get? Redacted information. So we
Or you
only
get
get
denied because
or denied.
it's you know, they pull out the national security card.
Exactly. I mean, so what do you really have? Puppets on a string. That's all you got. I mean, it's incredible. But I wanted to talk about, there was an article published this morning over at Zero Hedge titled The World's Most Deceptive Chart. I don't know if you've seen that or not, Dave, but there's one piece of information in there that really kind of drove this whole thing home as far as where we're currently at right now and what should absolutely terrify people. Not in the sense of, oh my God, the world's coming to an end, but to really look at how your investments are handled. I mean, I'm not giving any investment advice. You can, Dave, but I can't. But this one chart shows real S&P 500 total return beginning in 1900 through the present. And in 1968, the S&P sat at 724.47 on December 1st. On March the 1st, 2009, after the S&P had run up to a new all-time high in between those two dates of 2075.96. So it went from 270.97 to 2075.96. Then it dropped in 2009 to 859.58. So in 41 years, if you had been in the market that entire time, you would have only realized, or the stock market only grew in real growth by 135 points in those 41 years. And now it's reached a new all-time high, of course, since that day. So where's it going to go from here? I mean, is it going to lose another 80+%? I don't think it's going to take 41 years, because 41 years ago, or close to 50 years ago, we didn't have algorithms. We didn't have high frequency trading. We didn't have a consolidation of wealth. We didn't have Wall Street criminals to the degree that they are today. They've always been there, but not like they are today. And I mean, when I looked at this chart, it was just like, oh my God. You know, and it plays right into what Craig Hemke's been talking about for some time, as far as the death candle. I mean, we've got to be getting close to this thing falling off a cliff. I mean, just from a historical perspective, I mean, will the algorithms be able to save it? Will the plunge protection team be able to save it? Which is something else we didn't have between 2000 or between 1968 and 2003, I believe it was. No, 2000. We didn't have that. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that they're going to be able to evade that, or does any of this historical information have any relevance anymore at all? Because there's, I mean, 70+% of all the trading is done by computers. It's not even retail investors, it's just computers run by the giant corporations that we were talking about just a moment ago.
90% of the volume is institutional. The only problem I have with studies like this is a couple things, like, to say from 1960 whatever, when it was at 724, and then at the bottom it was 859. That's assuming, you bought at the top in 1960 whatever and sold at the bottom. What's the rate of return? And the other problem I have with it is the inflation adjustment, because inflation has been understated drastically since 1971, and probably understated for longer than that. So, show me a real rate of inflation number, and it's going to change the analysis. So, I mean, trying to lay out the presentation that Lance Roberts has laid out here, and I haven't read through the whole thing, but well, let's just see what's your cumulative. Let's just assume 5% inflation over the whole time period. What's your rate of return if you invested in 1900 and held it until now? How do you choose what your time frame is? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's why, I mean, I understand what he's trying to say. I mean, your real inflation adjusted returns in the stock market aren't what is advertised. But, and that, that's just, Wall Street's going to put their own spin on it. And it's always a function of where you jump in. Do you, have you sold any? Have you added? Or have you just bought and, if you just bought and held? So, that's the kind of problem I have with studies like this.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was thinking about. It's like, okay, how long is the average investor actually in the market? Because the time frame that I was looking at was 41 years. Average investor is not going to be in the market 41 years. Typical, mom and pop retail investor, that ain't going to happen. I mean, it could, but I would say the average is probably closer to about 15 to 20 max. I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything to substantiate that, but just understanding how people are, they're lazy.
Well, it's hard to say. And most people, their exposure to the stock market is their pension fund, whatever.
Right. And most people aren't involved in that for 40 plus years.
And some people are involved longer than that. So just, it kind of depends. These blanket studies like this are they're a little bit sensationalistic. So, like, if I had, I started working in the work world in 1985. So the S&P was at 211. Well, that's January. So let's just say the end of June 1985, the S&P is at 191. If I had just put a chunk of money into the stock market and held all the way through till now, and that was indexing the S&P 500, it's probably not a bad rate of return over that time frame. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just, and again, it's inflation, and if you adjust it by inflation, yeah, then the returns, a real rate of inflation, not this hokey, Case-Shiller, inflation or the CPI. Those are hokey numbers. They're drastically understating and misrepresenting inflation. If you did a real inflation number and adjusted back to what you know, that we're at 2370 now on the S&P. Okay, so if I discount it at just say 5% over, what's that, 32 years?
32 years, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what does that number turn out to be? I don't have the kind of calculator in front of me that lets me do that, but yeah, and that on that basis, your returns probably suck. and surprisingly suck. I mean, that's the idea behind inflation, right?
Right.
Make people think that everything's growing when it's really not.
It's just theft.
Right. It is. It's silent confiscation. It's you know, paper fiat currency, and inflation is the tool that the governments use and the elitists use to confiscate wealth.
Correct. And that's all that it is. I mean, and I think that that's kind of where he's going with this. I would like to think so anyway. I haven't read the whole article. I got hung up on this chart when I read down to it. It was just like, oh my God. You know, I started looking at these numbers, and I was using the bottom number a minute ago in 1983, which is 270.97, when I should have been using the top in 1968, like you pointed out, Dave, the 724.47. And that was the number that really got my attention versus what happened in 2009. I mean, if you just look at and that's really what I was looking at, was just that time frame, because so much happened during that time. We had the gold window closed. We had all the manipulation start coming into the market. The PPT was born. Not to mention algorithms and the HFT trading, all of this nonsense. You know, and Greenspan's bubble economics just became full-blown policy, basically. So you had all these various situations that really impacted the market and what's going on during that time frame. But it's still, even with all of that, it only managed to move 135 points.
And that was from top to bottom, though. I mean,
yes,
there's probably plenty of people who bought it at this 270 bottom in, it looks like 1982 or something.
Yeah.
You know, and are still holding it. And then you're sitting on, you know, 800% gains roughly at this point, or 900% gains if you're still holding, and
you're still holding,
indexing the S&P. Yeah.
And if inflation hasn't eaten up all of it.
Right. And that's why, yeah, it's a great intellectual exercise to say, oh, well, if you bought at the top in 68 and sold at the bottom in 2009, you didn't gain anything and you lost money on an inflation adjusted basis. But it's kind of an arbitrary time frame. It's certainly an argument against buying and holding in the stock market that Wall Street does not want you to see.
Yeah. Exactly. Makes me even more happy that I'm no longer invested in that thing.
Right. And that's the propaganda mantra, and it has been since the fiat system became full blown in the early 70s, and that's what they teach in all the business schools. You know, the best strategy is a long-term buy and hold of stocks. Well, who's to say that's true? And what number are you using? What number are you using for inflation?
Yeah, the only people that say that are people selling stocks.
Right, exactly.
Because they want fees.
Mutual fund companies and financial advisors and Wall Street snake oil salesmen.
Oh, you mean the criminal class.
That's right. The legally criminal class.
Right, exactly. Well, where should we go from here, Dave?
I got to go adjust the hot tub chemicals. That's where I'm going.
Oh, an adjustment we can all get behind.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I guess we'll end it there and pick it up on Thursday and see where we stand.
That sounds good to me.
All right, dude. Have a good one.
You too.